Hello, hello. Welcome to the cab. Here with us today is an award-winning playwright, Azure D. Osborne Lee, who wrote so many fascinating and beautiful plays. Hi, Azure.
Hi.
Could you introduce yourself to the cab audiences?
Sure. My name's Azure D. Osborne Lee. My pronouns are he, him, or they, them. I'm from the south of the United States, but I live in Brooklyn with my cat who might pop up at some point. So just be warned.
I'm so glad that you're living with the cat. I hope we
Yeah.
can see them during our interview today.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So, welcome to the cab, even though we are in different spaces. It's so nice to see you.
Yeah.
And
nice
apparently, we're living in a very weird time. And I think people have come up with some different coping mechanisms to deal with this new lifestyle. So how have you been spending your days?
How have I been spending my days? I've been watching a lot of TV because I currently live by myself, and so that's the thing to do. I just bought a new pedometer, like a step counter. So now I'm going for walks in the neighborhood, and it's really kind of interesting because they finished a bunch of construction projects during quarantine. So I'm like, oh, where did this park come from? This wasn't here when COVID outbreak started. And yeah, I read books some. I've been trying to get some writing done, working on like a couple of other projects, spending time with my cat. Yeah, that's it. Oh, and cooking a lot and washing dishes. I feel like that's what everybody is doing now. You're just like, it's a constant battle to like keep the dishes clean.
Wow, it sounds like though you're spending your days very productively.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Virgo. I feel best when I'm doing little productive things. Um, so that's what I try to do. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. So speaking of the pandemic, let's talk about your most recent play, The Beast of Warren. And I
Okay.
noticed that it was actually last updated this spring in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I was so struck by how strongly it's resonating with the current circumstances we're living in. So could you talk more about the play and how you came up with the idea of writing it?
Yeah, actually, so my writing process, I mean, I guess everybody has their own process, but I feel like mine's a little weird. So I'm really interested in science. My parents are engineers. And so the initial premise for The Beast of Warren was I was just like, what's the difference between rabbits and hares? And so I started doing all this research about like rabbits versus hares. And I learned about this virus that affects rabbits but doesn't affect hares. And so then I started doing all this research about the rabbit population in Australia and how they released this virus to try to control the rabbit population because rabbits aren't indigenous to Australia. They were brought in by the English who wanted to hunt them, but then they kind of went wild. And how they built this fence. So yeah, the structure of the Beast of Warren is experimental in itself, but it's really like this exploration of like rabbits and hares, but you can kind of see that in there, but they're people, right? Like we're talking about people. Like I never want people to just be on stage with their little rabbit ears like hopping around. Like that's not the kind of play I'm writing. And what we ended up with was this sort of like population that's vulnerable, right? And is being hunted and they don't know what's going on, and then they start dying from this virus, and then you see the second act is like the perspective of the people who are the caretakers of the people who are dying of the virus. So yeah, actually wrote it a few years ago. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, that happens sometimes where I'll write something and then it becomes really relevant a few years later. So I actually posted on Facebook sort of towards the beginning of the pandemic. I'm like, I kind of have a play about a pandemic. Like, is it too soon? And everybody was like, no, do the thing. And then Dr. Susan Gale Todd, who is the artistic director at the Austin Scottish Rite Theatre, was like, hey, can I read your script? And then she said, we totally want to do a reading of this. So that's why it was updated this spring, because there was a reading the theater is based in Austin, but it was a virtual reading. And so it was really cool because I got to work with a lot of Austin-based actors, but I was in Brooklyn and one of our other actors was in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Wow, fabulous. So like when you updated the script for the last time, have you been like, do you think you've been affected by like the current situation or?
You know, the plot didn't really change. Like the plot is kind of as is. It's just like little bits, like refining the language. I learned a lot. The reading that we just had was a Black and brown cast, all Black and brown people. So the vulnerable population that's catching this virus, those were played by Black actors, and then the caretakers were played by Latinx actors, which I think was the closest to the ideal casting. It was really fun, you know, just learning more about the work because it was experimental. You know, I work on new plays and my plays in themselves are experimental. I kind of wasn't sure if I was done with it or not, but I think it's pretty close to done. You know, like it's 60 minutes, like exactly an hour, like just like a bite, you know, about plagues.
Yeah, I really, really loved it. I cannot wait to see it on stage when you come back to theater.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about one of your most popular plays, Crooked Parts. And also it's one of the plays that you recommended us to engage with. And you mentioned that it's actually based on your own life story. So could you tell us more about the play? And since it's an autobiographical play, I'm also curious if the experience of writing that play has affected your perspective to see yourself and your life and the world around you.
Sure, yeah. Crooked Parts is semi-autobiographical, so it kind of started with this writing exercise that Orrin Squire gave, which was called this childhood rituals exercise. So basically he asked us to think of a ritual that we had in our childhood and then write about the moment where that ritual was interrupted. So I was very inspired by that. This was really my first serious foray into playwriting. And so I didn't really know how to approach it, but my childhood was very musical, you know, in a lot of ways. So I had just moved to New York City. I was in this little room that I was subleasing in Harlem. And I remember being on this twin bed, just like listening, like on YouTube, listening to all this different music and then like writing and crying a little bit and writing more. It's been a long process. It's now a full-length play. And yeah, it's been wild. I mean, I've seen it. It's had a workshop. It's had a handful of readings. It's being published now in a forthcoming anthology. And it's really funny seeing casting people who are sort of based on you and your family. That's weird, you know, and then also, you know, the way that family receives being sort of reflected back in plays is also can be complicated. But my family is supportive of my work. They just had some feelings.
No, every family has some feelings about our work.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's really funny just like seeing, you know, I feel like I'm a very unique person with a unique look. And that's not bragging. I've just noticed that people remember me, you know, so I have to, you know, remember that I can't just scream something anonymously and then come back later. Like people will know that it was me. Like, you're that person who yelled that thing or said that thing in a talkback. That literally happened to me in London. So it's funny meeting actors who are supposed to portray the character that's based on me. I had an instance where an actor was just very hyper masculine and was like broing at me a lot, and I was just like, "What is going on?" And he's like, "Yeah, bro. Hey, what's up?" And I was just like,
I got a new sibling.
right? I'm like, "What's going on? This is not the right energy." So, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. What is your favorite moment in that play? If you
I'm
have, if you can choose one.
I think my favorite moment, I mean, there are a lot of really lovely moments, but my favorite moment is probably the grace at dinner scene when everybody is an adult, and the grace that Freddie says for dinner, just because it's kind of my favorite thing. I felt it's durational, for little minor spoiler for people, but um, I wanted to try it. I went to school in London for site-specific experimental and collaborative theater at Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. And so I felt really nervous about it. I was like, oh, this is a great idea. Like, what if I just drop this enormous chunk of text in here? And then I kept going, is it too much? I think it's too much. But then watching it, the point is that it's too much. So it's just a really great moment in theaters and in readings, because you can see the waves of people realizing what's happening. People who are familiar with that Bible verse, like immediately know something has gone wrong. Other people it takes them a while to realize that something has gone wrong, and the reactions of the actors are great. And, the actor who's playing Freddie, which is Freddie's based on me, gets to have a lot of fun. So that's my favorite moment.
I really love that moment too, and I thought that was a really beautiful monologue.
Yes. Kudos to whoever wrote the Psalms. I feel like I should know that, but whatever.
Awesome, thank you. And I think one of the most fascinating aspects of that play is how so creatively you imagine the stage. And one of my favorite scenes are where the mess of Haribo and t-shirts and magazines appears around Winnie. And I will not spoil where that goes, but could you share us how you came up with those images, or what inspired you to create those theatrical moments?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I don't feel like I had sort of the stereotypical upbringing of a theater maker. Like I went to go see plays. I would go see a play with school, or my parents would take me to see, like, I know we saw The Wiz, and we'd go on school field trips, but I was never like a Broadway buff. I was in orchestra and Spanish club. I was in a lot of clubs, like a little bit of an overachiever, but yeah, orchestra was sort of my main performance outlet from 7th grade on. And I feel like my high school drama department was low-key racist because they never cast me in anything, like the whole 4 years. So, yeah, but I'm really into science fiction and fantasy. Like I have been since I was a kid. I mentioned my parents are engineers. My dad's kind of a big nerd, and he would make us read books to him. So we would be reading these huge fantasy and science fiction novels. We would go to Dungeons and Dragons games, and like Magic the Gathering. I learned to play very early, and then would take it to elementary school. And back when video stores were still really a thing, whenever we go to the video store, if we couldn't find anything to rent, we would rent Labyrinth.
Oh my God.
So that's my favorite movie of all time. So I'm pretty into puppets. Like I'm pretty puppety. And I was a puppeteer in like a previous iteration. Like I worked as a puppeteer in grad school. In fact, I have some friends who buy me a puppet like on my birthday or every Christmas. So I've got like little puppets, like I'll keep them in my bag and then pull them out at readings and things. And even as a kid, I loved to build stuff out of garbage. Like my mom would be like, "Stop collecting garbage," and I'm like, "No." Yeah,
These are my art materials.
exactly. And so she was just like, "Okay, fine, just put down newspaper." So, so the idea of kind of having, oh right, Labyrinth, the garbage lady is one of my favorite characters in Labyrinth, with the bear, where she's like, "Oh, you Miss Toby, didn't you, dear? Like, here's your little Toby."
Yes,
So I just love the idea of like this huge mound of like garbage and
yes.
debris
Mhm.
moving around the stage, you know, like that is completely appealing to me. And actually for the workshop, I ended up building it myself.
Oh, wow, really?
Um, yeah, because sometimes I'll build puppets. When I was at Central, I did a puppetry unit. And so they had us
Wow.
build some puppet, like I built a puppet out of just like garbage, basically like a weird broom handle and some like garbage bags and things, and you know, just like that's the stuff I love. And so after a while of writing and watching theater, I was like, I want to see more stuff that I love, like freaky, weird, like experimental, puppety, like sci-fi, fantasy, queer, black stuff. Like that's what I'm into. So that's what I'm trying to make.
Fascinating. I think that explains so much about your aesthetics.
Yes, absolutely.
I love them all so much. Also, you said that you were in orchestra. So do you play
Yes,
instruments
I
too?
played the violin.
Wow, wow,
Yeah,
wow. So talented.
thank you. I mean, I don't play anymore, but I did for quite some time. In high school, I had this, I moved to a new district and my 4-year plan got messed up, and I kind of had this traffic jam of like specialties.
Mhm.
So I ended up majoring in English and Spanish. And so at some point I gave up orchestra so I could continue taking Spanish, so I could take Spanish 5 AP. Um, yeah, it was, so I took a
Wow.
lot of stuff, and like, you know, grad school teaches you anything. It's that after a while you have to specialize in something. Like you can't just be doing all the things all the time. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
That strikes me so hard as one of graduate students.
Yeah, exactly. It's like focus.
And I no wonder why your plays are so lively, theatrical, and musical. And I think you like were able to bring all of them into your plays.
Yeah, and I don't like being bored. I mean, when I teach, I'm like that as well. I actually ended up I got persuaded to teach geometry last summer. You can,
Wow.
and so in summer school, so these are kids who have failed geometry during the school year, and so they were all like, "You're not like a normal math teacher," and I was like, "Nope, I'm not. I don't like being bored. I'm naming the shapes, you know, showing them crazy videos, you know, like I'll do a little dance, like I don't care."
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I love it so much. Thank you. So you already shared a little bit, but let's talk more about your creative process. How do you usually start writing and how do you get to the end?
You know, each piece is different. I'm reaching over here for my, this is my notebook
Oh,
that I have a bunch of them on my bookcase now. My time at Central, like one of our big things was they were like, always carry a notebook and a pen. So this notebook I've had for a long time because I've used it sort of on and off. This one I started, in 2016. So, but this is like number 5 of one of these. So right now, I have a couple of pages with ideas on them. If I do any research, I'm just like scribbling the ideas. I like the blank pages because sometimes I'll draw ideas or I'll chart out ideas. I also put my tarot card readings in here.
yes.
Um, and like recipes sometimes. So this is a big part of the work. I don't know if you do this at all, but in writing, sometimes I feel like I have to switch back and forth from using paper and then the computer. You know, it's like sometimes I'll get stuck, and so then I have to print the script, and I'll be writing notes, and then I'm like, ugh, this is inefficient. Let me just switch to the computer, so then I'm on the computer going. Yeah, but I love research. I love research. So right now I have an idea that's percolating that's about mushrooms, basically. That's where it started, like Mayan culture and mushrooms, like fairy rings. So yeah, I'll just like sit and like research things and then see what's connected to that. And that for me helps put narrative together because it, in my mind, it like flows together. Yeah, I really like scientific concepts and things like that. I do the research and then it seems to connect, So yeah, but and I'll go see like art, etc. Yeah, but I love a deadline. Deadlines are great.
You're a Virgo. I can tell.
Yeah, because eventually you just have to do the thing, right? Like you can research forever and think about it forever, but when somebody is like, "Where are your pages?" then it's like, "Oh, okay," you're like writing. So yeah.
And we all need deadlines, especially during the pandemic. They're so important.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're just like crying and writing, That's happened to me more times than I credit grad school for teaching me how to write in a pinch, because the first time I was in grad school, I got to the point where towards the end I was like, should I fake my own death? Maybe I can fake my own death instead of writing this thing. So now I know when you get to you'll get to the point where you're like, is there anything I can do to get out of this? And then it's like, no, just do the thing. And then I do the thing.
Oh, I totally hear you. I totally hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. So our core values of this season at the Cabaret is a symbiotic collaboration, and we are trying to figure out how we can collaborate virtually and how we can really appreciate each other's presence in this socially distanced time. And so I was wondering how you collaborate with other people, and if there was any memorable moment that you want to share in terms of your collaboration.
Oh, that's a great question. I love collaboration. Collaboration is great. I have artistic collaborators, is what I call them. I have a lot of artistic collaborators who are actors. I have a couple who are directors. Kyria Traber is my primary artistic collaborator, who actually, I sort of decided she was going to be a director.
You decided.
Yeah, she was an actor. She finished her MFA. And then I was like, I think you should direct. And she's like, I've never done this before. And I was like, I don't care. I think you could do it. And so I just invited her to do it. And then I kept inviting her back. And so she's directed almost everything that I've written. It's hard to find a good match,
it really is
hard.
hard.
Because it depends on what you value. And for me, my political values are particularly important when it comes to producing, social justice oriented spaces where we're going to be respectful of people's identities and time. I always pay people. I don't work for free, and I don't ask people to work for free. That's a core value of mine. And my collaborators know that. So even if I'm offering them what seems like a small stipend, they know that that's likely the best I can do. And then I'll never come to them and be like, I don't have anything, And also that I look out for them. Like I'm always advocating for my collaborators. I want to know, how are they getting paid? When are they getting paid? What are they being expected? What's being expected of them? I'll bring food often. I've brought my popcorn machine to rehearsal. That's a cheap way to feed people. It's just like bring popcorn kernels, and I have a popcorn machine, and I brought butter, salt, and I just made sort of never ending popcorn as a way for people to have snacks. And I also ordered a pizza for folks who couldn't afford to get their own lunch. Just being really mindful of what people's needs are and respectful of that. Collaborators who I've worked with before and I know I can trust, I'll often offer to pay them early. If that's a thing that they need, the little perks, that those are things that make people want to come back. I mean, also they like my work, but
Yeah, that's different
like,
thing.
but it's not only about that, right? Like it's
Totally.
so a thing that I think makes my collaboration with Curia work well is that I'm also an arts administrator. As I mentioned, I'm a Virgo, etc. I need communication, you know. I'm not a micromanager. I like to let people do their jobs, but I do need to know that you're doing your job. So I need to know that we have a cast, or you have some sort of plan, or, you know, whatever it is you're doing. And if you can communicate that to me, that's great. If you need something, I invite people to ask me, like, please tell me if you need something so that I can tell you yes, no, or where to get it from. Yeah, and also having fun. Like, we love to have fun with each other.
Yes, yes.
Appropriately, right? So we like to schedule enough time for people to have a little like, oh, I haven't seen you in a while. You look great. I love you. Blah, 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 you know, whatever. And then we get down to work, right? Because we want to be respectful of people's times. You don't want people to feel like they're wasting the whole rehearsal just talking when they're there to do a job. So it's a delicate balance.
Oh, sounds fantastic. So maybe going off of that point, what does community mean to you?
You know, it's funny. Somebody asked me that when I was just coming out of grad school at Central. That was in 2011. And I would get mad because I would just be like, you know, community. It's community. Why are you even asking? And now I understand. I've worked as a grant maker, and, you know, for me, community means queer community, trans community, Black community, Southern community, and sort of the like cross sections and like Venn diagrams, you know, and also people who are down, right? Like if you're down, allies, right? Of course, allies being in the space, I feel like that's a privilege, but so I do have a production company, Roots and River Productions, which I founded when I came out of grad school at Central, and we support the work of Black, queer, and or trans artists, but we also have other artists in the space, right? Like I don't say like only Black queer artists can act in my show, but you know, there's a certain amount of like straight cis people in particular, they're on probation, you know? Like we just need to be sure that you're down and you can collaborate. I mean, especially straight cis men, that's the hardest, you know? Like we have, I'm just keeping it real. Like we have a couple who like we love to work with, but because my primary collaborator for my work, my director is a Black queer woman, you know, if you can't take direction from a Black queer woman, like if you have a problem with that, then that means you can't participate in my work.
Totally.
You know, so that means you won't be asked back. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. So I think it brings us to our last question. So in the world and theater as well are facing multiple challenges recently. As you just said, like systemic racism, anti-Blackness, and of course the pandemic, even though they are nothing new. So I'm wondering what do you think art can do these days, and what's your hope as an artist?
Well, you know, first, the most obvious thing for me, you know, the first thing I mentioned is that I'm watching a lot of TV, right? More people are home than ever. People are really plugging into their entertainment sources more consistently, right? So content is really important. And I know that I'm experiencing sort of like an influx of interest from TV and film, right? Because they're like, okay, we want to diversify, you know, but also we're interested in like getting these theater makers and seeing what they can do for our industry. Art is what keeps people alive, you know, in times of crisis often. Art is what keeps people from killing each other for sport. Say in apocalypse games, you know, like I know everybody for a while was planning their apocalypse team, and I always pointed out, listen, you just need like a good actor or a storyteller to keep people entertained because they start doing weird stuff when they're bored. People do weird stuff for entertainment when they're bored. So that's a thing to remember. But I think that also art can communicate new ideas, and that at its best, it moves people, right? They have an emotional experience that they wouldn't otherwise be open to. And that might change the way that they think of things, the way that they experience desire or anger or compassion or whatever. So there'll never not be a need for that, you know, especially now moving forward. So I'm really eager to see what are the ways that the arts will continue to be supported through these times, because you know, it's not looking good for the US in this pandemic. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I watched through a lot of content on my streaming services, and we're not exactly clear to start filming yet. So what are the answers? You know, what can we do? I feel like theater has a place in that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anything else you want to share with the CAP community?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Azure. And it was like so fantastic to talk to you. And we really hope to see you at the CAB again. Hopefully in person next time.
Yeah, yeah. I love you.
I love you too. Oh my God. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.